Welcome everybody to the October Energy Commission meeting, City of Ann Arbor. Calling it to order at 2 minutes after 6. Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Palig. Here. Commissioner Clevey.
Present.
Commissioner Appleyard.
Here.
Commissioner Levin.
Here.
Commissioner Colvin Garcia.
Here.
Councilmember Frenzel.
Here.
We do have a quorum. Approval of the agenda. Is there anyone who would like to add anything to the agenda? Or subtract anything? Okay. Seeing none, I'll call for an approval of the agenda as written.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Did we get minutes out? I didn't.
Yes. Yes.
I didn't see them.
I didn't see minutes either.
I saw them.
You saw?
I
Okay.
I saw them and I
Oh,
read
good.
them.
Well, in that case.
Okay. Those of you who saw the minutes, you folks are good minute taking. So is there anything that anyone would like to add to the minutes? If not, we'll go ahead and approve them. All in favor?
Aye.
Public input. Oh boy, look at all the people in the audience. Is there anybody who'd like to talk about anything related to energy? Oh, okay. Well, we have another spot at the end, so if something comes up, we'll close that and move on to the energy report.
Sure, a few things here. The Ann Arbor Area Renewable Homes and Businesses Tour is coming up October 14th here from 10 a.m. to 4. It's free, open to the public, and it will showcase solar, renewable energy, and energy efficiency options by local residents. You can learn more at AnnArborSolarTour.org, including tour sites, and there'll be open houses various times between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Be sure to check that out. Next time, it kind of relates to items for next agenda. We're busy looking at the Green Fleets policy update, and happy to report that right now this week we have a Chevy Bolt that we have on loan that we're having units check out. So
Cool.
Folks who have smaller type uses right now, whether it's the plants, community services, we'll get a chance to check that out.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing increasing numbers of EVs in the state bid options that we typically rely on. And there's, interestingly, a new effort underway supported by the EPA called Fleets for the Future. And it's a nice way of, they're using buying cooperatives, of which we are members of, to really infuse and discount electric vehicles and EV equipment. So hoping that it dovetails nicely with our effort to kind of pivot towards new EVs in the Green Fleets policy. So sharing that good news. And likewise, also going to get an update plan for November's meeting on solar carport coming to Ann Arbor. The DDA board voted unanimously to support the electric PV project for the 4th and Catherine parking lot. So Dave Conkle from GLREA will be on hand and consulting with the DDA to share a little bit more about that.
Great.
So
Good.
It's good news. And yeah.
Anything else any other commissioners would like to add? Share? No. Okay. Moving right along, we are fortunate enough tonight to have a presentation by on the Water Utility Emissions Challenge. Great. Take it away.
All right.
That's, oops.
There we go. Do you want to lower the screens? Yes.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Carol Miller. I'm a professor at Wayne State University in Detroit in the Department of Civil and Environmental Engineering. However, I am an Ann Arbor resident, and I am a graduate of the University of Michigan, so I kind of feel like I belong here, sort of. And I'm also one of the co-founders of one of the products, businesses we'll be talking about as part of this brief presentation. And another co-founder is Locke McCabe. And we'll kind of be going through this as a tag team, this presentation, and it's very informal. So please feel free to stop us at any particular point. So the way I'm going to go through this presentation is to basically talk a little bit about what is behind the Water Utility Energy Challenge and the types of tools that are being used as part of this challenge. In particular, one of the primary tools we're using is called LEAM. And before I get into the challenge or the competition, I want to talk just a little bit about LEAM, and then I'm going to, I think Locke will probably talk mostly about the Water Utility Energy Challenge. So that's kind of where we're headed here. As I mentioned, this challenge, which is supported through the American Water Works Association out of Denver, Colorado, and also funded through the Great Lakes Protection Fund out of Illinois, this particular competition is one of the first opportunities to highlight the use of this particular emission prediction and forecasting technology that we've developed. And the technology, the little icon is here. It's for LEAM. And LEAM, that acronym stands for Locational Emissions Estimation Methodology. And you'll see why it's called that in just a moment. And the whole idea behind LEAM is to open up this concept, make it possible for people, businesses, and so on, municipalities, to adopt environmentally sensitive electricity. And up until now, although many of us have wanted to be environmentally sensitive in our electricity use, it's been very hard to do that because we never really, we're not privy to the differentiation in the electricity we receive in our home, whether it's from generator A, generator B, power plant 20 miles away. So even though we know during the day the source of the electricity that we get at our home or our business may come from renewables at some point, it may come from a very clean, updated gas-fired power plant, or it may come from a very dirty coal-fired power plant. Even though we know this is happening during the day, it's very dynamic, we don't have an ability to see that and to know that. And so the transparency up till now hasn't been there. With this transparency, though, we can actually use electricity according to the values that we have. In other words, if it's extremely important to us that we use low carbon emitting sources, we can take advantage of this signal and try to shift those things that are easily shifted to that particular time of the day. So one of the important concepts that our algorithm relies on is the locational marginal price of electricity. We have 15 minutes, and I'm not going to go into that in too much depth other than to say that that's sort of the backbone behind our methodology. And the LMP values for electricity vary throughout the day. 5-minute intervals, you can get new values of LMPs at nodes throughout your ISO region. So we track those locational marginal prices, which are variable in space, which this slide is giving you an idea of that with the heat map here. And these locational marginal prices, in addition to being a function of space, they're also a function of time. They are very variable during the day. So what LEAM allows us to do is use a series of algorithms that take this information as input and allows us to, with high levels of accuracy, to predict the marginal generator that's associated with these signals that we're seeing on the margin. So that as you see these prices go up and down, we're basically converting that to information about the type of marginal generator, the type of fuel that's being burned, the emissions that are coming out of the stack, and those sorts of things. So very simplistically then, environmentally sensitive electricity, as developed through LEAM, brings in information about locational marginal prices, allows us to determine what is the particular marginal generating unit type that's providing electricity to this location, and it's very specific to location at this particular time, and from knowing that, we can provide the user information about real-time emissions. So one of the important values of the LEAM approach is that it provides much more accurate and time variable and space variable values of emissions. LEAM is designed to give us information on 5 types of pollutants: carbon, lead, mercury, NOx, and SOx. So the user can get all of that information or can target for a particular one. But obviously, there's approaches already out there, there have been for 20, 30 years, to make average estimates of emissions, and that's what most people are using today. You know, if you use a kilowatt hour of energy, that's going to convert to so much carbon, so much NOx, so much mercury. But those average values are correct over huge spaces and over huge times, but they don't allow you to differentiate in space and time. And in fact, the average approach can generate huge errors at any particular point in time or space. You could be off by a factor of 100 or more. So LEAM is our tool. There have been a variety of applications that have been developed using LEAM as an important signal. PEPSO, which is also being used in the Water Utility Energy Challenge, is one of those tools, and we may be using that here in Ann Arbor. Currently, we're focusing only on the raw version, if you will, of LEAM. We also have another tool we've developed over on the right-hand side here that's called HERO. HERO can be used as an Android app, or it can be used from your laptop. HERO is an acronym that stands for Home Emissions Readout, that can be, used by residential users to give them some idea of this change in emission signals. So another application that we've gone into is energy management systems. In fact, we think that's, right now that's where we're getting, the water utility and the energy management system are probably the 2 areas where we're getting the greatest amount of interest. We're currently running a pilot with HEPTA Control Systems, which is the energy management outfit that works with Dan Gilbert's firm in Detroit, the Bedrock folks. And we're piloting this on the Chrysler House in Detroit. We're bringing in real-time signal of their energy use in that building and giving them real-time and cumulative carbon footprint information, so as well as information on the other 4 pollutants. So this is just giving you an example of the type of output that we can give that particular business owner. What we're here, though, tonight primarily is to talk about how Ann Arbor is using LEAM and what this Water Utility Energy Challenge is all about. And I'm happy to say that Ann Arbor is one of the competitors that made it to the final round of the WUEC, that is to now partake in the full range of tools that we can offer to Ann Arbor. There are 4 other competitors in this competition, just to let you know. And the Ann Arbor system is sort of mid-size in terms of the number of consumers that make use of the water. The smallest one we have is up on Lake Superior. It's a community it's a water system that serves less than 500 people. The largest one serves a couple million people. So they range in size. And we're having fun working with Ann Arbor. Ann Arbor has been very forthcoming, very active and participatory in this competition. Actually, all of the utilities up to this point have been great. I'm going to let Locke take over in a second, but let me just mention also, one thing we don't want to lose sight of is the final trophy. Just to let you know, the winner will be announced in Las Vegas in June of 2018. We actually kicked this competition off at the American Water Works Association annual national meeting, which is a huge, huge event. It was in Philadelphia this June. That's when they kicked off this competition. The big hoopla over the winning water utility will be in June in Las Vegas. So I just thought you could put that on your calendar so you could maybe join us all out there.
Okay, thank you, Carol. Good evening, everyone. My name is Locke McCabe, co-founder of Energy Emissions Intelligence. And just to provide a little bit more context here, I've had a chance to work with Carol and her team at Wayne State for a number of years, and the question emerged about 2 years ago. This is a powerful technology. This adds in the capacity, really for the first time, to reduce emissions by managing your energy more effectively. How do we get this out of Wayne State, and how do we begin to bring this to the market? And so that's what Energy Emissions Intelligence, E2I, was formed to help make happen. And it's just been a real pleasure to work with the water department here at the City of Ann Arbor as they are helping us pilot this technology and answer sort of a core question, like, does it actually make a difference? So turns out, and folks at the water utility were very helpful with this, as we looked for applications of, okay, if we understand now that it matters when we consume electricity, what do we have flexibility over when it comes to making choices? And turns out that the Ann Arbor utility does a lot of filter washing. So that basically is cleaning out the filters that are used in the system, and they have total discretion as to when they do this. And we said, great, let's focus on that. So what we'll be talking about is a system that they're employing to reduce emissions that would otherwise result or do otherwise result from their filter washing activities, which they do every day. And let me just keep going here. So what they do is they take the LEAM day-ahead signal, and I'll show you some examples of this in just a minute, and they look at that signal and they say, okay, when can we schedule our filter washing when two conditions are present? One is emissions are lower, and we're in off-peak pricing. So we're not going to increase our cost to reduce emissions. But where we find times when both costs are low and emissions are low, that's when we're going to do our filter washing. The only other constraint is we're not going to do so much filter washing that we're going to run the risk of increasing our demand charges. So the reason they don't do all their filter washing during the window often is because they need to do, they would otherwise run the risk of increasing their demand charges. So just so you know, your team is interested in emissions. They've been very engaged with this. They're also keeping their costs down while they're engaged in this project. And so then they schedule the filter washing, and then they report to us, to Energy Emissions Intelligence, when they do their filter washing, and we do an analysis on a monthly basis of, okay, how'd it go? Did you reduce emissions compared to last year's schedule? So just as an FYI, the baseline is what their filter washing schedule was last year, 2016. We're comparing 2017 with 2016. And just to give you a sense of what these marginal emissions can look like, these are day-ahead estimates based upon pricing information that is published by MISO, the Mid-Intercontinental ISO that serves this area. And we take their pricing estimates for the LMP that serves Ann Arbor and translates that into the most likely generator type, which around here will generally be either coal or different kinds of natural gas. And so you can look at this and say, well, we have a sense of when coal is likely on the margin and when natural gas is likely on the margin, because what this graph is it is showing you the carbon intensity estimated for a megawatt of power at different hours of the day, and this is over a 24-hour period. So there are 24 bars here. And what you see basically is for this day, and actually this day is today for this location. So these estimates came out last night from MISO. shows that basically coal is on the margin in the early hours of the day and in the late hours of the day, but otherwise it's pretty much been natural gas. And that is because during this period, the demand of power is going up and going down, and as the demand is going up and down, the utility is bringing on and off different kinds of generators, okay? But, yeah, and often things look sort of like this, but not always. What we see here are two other days in which you see in the upper right-hand side a day which turned out to be almost all carbon, almost all natural gas and different kinds of natural gas generators. So that's where there's differentiation there. And then and that was the 21st of September, and on the 28th of September, again, you see coal on the essentially in the wee hours of the night, and then different kinds of natural gas during the day. And it's this information which folks at the water utility then take, they overlay with their pricing, what's on-peak and off-peak pricing, and they schedule their filter washing during periods to the degree they can when both emissions and prices are lower. The impacts of this can actually be pretty interesting. It turns out that by far and away, the fastest, easiest, cheapest way to reduce carbon is simply consume less electricity when coal is on the margin. And so what you see here, that we look at this both in nominal and normalized numbers. What you see here is comparing July 2017 with the control variables of 2016, which is essentially what they did last year in terms of their schedule. And we take their hourly filter washing schedule, we compare it with the hourly emission schedule, we integrate all that, and it turns out that they reduced, for the month of July, their carbon emission from filter washing by 34%. Simply by doing, in this case, a little less filter washing. So you see over on the right-hand side where it says filter washes, in July 2017, there were 210 filter washing cycles. And in July 2016, there was 247. So there was a reduction in overall filter washing. And then we see when we go to normalize, which we'll go to in a minute, there's also overall reduction because they did more filter washing when emissions were lower. And actually part of the story, just as a point of information, is that, oh, historically we always do our filter washing at 1 or 2 in the morning. Well, turns out 1 and 2 in the morning is a period when coal is almost always on the margin. So now they're doing much more of their filter washing at 5, 6, 7 in the morning, which is a period that is tends to be lower emissions and still is in their off-peak pricing period. You see also we focus on mercury, which is Hg, NOx, SOx, and lead. And for this competition, since it's funded by the Great Lakes Protection Fund, and they're particularly interested in mercury, you get the most points for reducing mercury. Point of information. Just going on, looking at the normalized value, so this is taking out, or rather controlling for the reality that they did less filter washing, now just focusing on a per filter washing basis, you also see a reduction of carbon by 6%, simply by doing filter washing at a different period of the day. Now, we believe that this basic principle can be applied to water utilities, to all kinds of buildings, especially instances where you have a little bit of flexibility in your load, or where you can begin to think more flexibly about your load options. So we're doing pilots, other pilots as well at University of Michigan and Michigan State. We're talking with a large asset holder of renewables that are selling RECs right now. And the question is, well, does a REC sold at one point of the day have a different value than a REC at another point of the day because it has a different carbon impact? And then we're also talking with some large commercial building companies. And we'd love to ask the question, can we do this, City of Ann Arbor? Can we do it for this building here? I mean, the answer is yes, we can do it. But would you like to do a pilot with Lean, with E2I? I think that is the end of our presentation. Appreciate your patience, and thank you so much.
Interesting report. Questions from the commission?
Oh, yeah, I just have a quick question. So I assume weather is somewhat factored into the next day report? So if it's gonna be like if it's gonna be really hot or cold?
Weather is factored in by the ISO.
Okay.
The ISO is the dispatch agency that sets the locational marginal price. So
Gotcha.
we will see the locational marginal price go up and down based on weather. But that's already factored in to the LMP. So yes,
Okay,
it is
gotcha.
taken into account. And things like day of the week, is it Saturday, is it Sunday, is there a Super Bowl, is there a, yeah, yes.
How do you factor in, like solar? I mean, solar's already gonna have all those pollution things that you're collecting, none of those are gonna show up. So how would you know it's in the mix? Because there's electricity with no emissions? I mean, wouldn't that throw the system off, I guess?
You want to talk about that?
So, sometimes.
Could you do it to
shows
the
up-
mic so the
Yes.
people at home can hear, please? Thank you.
So renewable energy, whether it be solar or wind, sometimes shows up in the marginal pricing information directly. You sort of know that when marginal prices are below like $15 an hour because, $15 a megawatt hour, because you can't produce you can't run a coal plant or natural gas plant at $15 or less. There are parts of the country, Minnesota, Madison, where we see regularly actually that renewables show up on the margin directly. The other thing about Lehman as a process is at the building level, we can add in, essentially account for on-site renewable energy generation and build that into the calculations. So we don't get that information at the building level from the ISO, but we can add that into our own calculus.
So if I understand this right, what you're doing is trying to get people to use energy in the middle, kind of. Not at the peak times because the electricity is going to cost more, and not at the real low usage times when it's just going to be running coal plants.
So the way, that's one way of thinking about it, but really what we're broadly creating the possibility for is consuming less energy when coal is on the margin, when it's coming from a coal plant. The question then of whether you also would do it when you are at a lower cost, when the price is lower. Well, if you're a resident or a small business in Ann Arbor, you pay the same price regardless of the day, time of day, right? So if you're price insensitive, then you have a lot more flexibility. But obviously, if you're price sensitive, as any commercial or more institutional municipal place will be, then you would want to look at the place at the time of days when both emissions are low and you're still in off-peak pricing. The other thing is that during a band of, say, on-peak pricing, there are still ups and downs that you may see. So within the context of even during on-peak pricing, you may say, well, we really don't want to do it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because coal's on the margin that day. And as you saw in some of the examples, it actually can move around quite a bit. It's usually stable, but sometimes it moves, and you can't predict in advance how that's going to look, what those emission profiles will look like.
I can show you graphs. I have some graphs.
Oh.
We track this I'm at CMS.
Oh,
So
okay.
I
So-
can track exactly LMP to timing to what we're generating minute by minute
Yeah.
and carbon intensity. And so I've got a lot of data at my fingertips that you probably grab in a different way, but we're monitoring it pretty closely too.
Yeah, and the data that we grab is the data that MISO publishes.
Right.
Their 5-minute and then also their day-ahead data.
And is your data the same thing based on price? Is it price-based?
Our data goes into MISO. MISO aggregates it
Oh,
at
they-
the
okay, same
LMP level.
thing.
So they're seeing the same thing. CMS has a different node than DTE does. You're looking at DTE's node, I assume. and
That's closest to this
this-
location.
Correct.
Yeah.
So aggregating it all up to LMP, LMP is different at these different nodes. The electrical mix at each of the nodes is dictated by who the local generator is for the most part. That's not 100% true, and that's why MISO captures this, because there's external to the actual node generation that goes into the node. Electrons don't like to follow necessarily
Right.
the the wires that you want them to, so. Anyway, that's another matter in itself.
Yeah.
I'll get my Sparky.
Yeah, it's not as technical, but what are some of the activities, tasks that you've seen in your pilots, like the office buildings, that are like really optional? Because people will show up to work when it's time to show up to work, and you can't say, I'm sorry, but come in at 2, or whatever,
Yeah, I would say we're on the very early stages of really beginning to explore that in terms of office buildings, but some of the things that we've talked about include, so buildings that have energy management systems will have protocol for, that are price sensitive, will have protocol to what do you do if you're facing a price spike? What do you back down on? So it's not uncommon for buildings that have energy management systems to basically say, if we have to reduce power, this is what we're going to do. And so one of the questions is, can we take that basic set of strategies and say, well, if we want to reduce our consumption during high carbon periods, what do we do? So borrow some from that. The other area that we think is really, really interesting, and we have a couple proposals out along these lines, is how do we engage with the occupants of the building to have a conversation like, well, if it's the winter time and carbon is on the margin, would it be okay if we turned down the HVAC 3 degrees? Would you be willing to be a little cooler during high carbon periods? And oh, by the way, if you really care, we can provide you with a signal so that you know we're not just simply freezing you, it really is a high carbon period, and you've agreed to this. Or would it be okay if we can, dial the lights back under high carbon periods and things like that? We also are working with another startup from Michigan called Carbon Cash, which has created an app that basically rewards individuals for doing carbon reduction things. Right now, they're using the same kind of carbon value that you all are using, which is the average. But they're really excited about building Leem into their app, because now you can begin to say, what is our strategy to reduce my carbon footprint by 20%? The other thing they've done that's very clever is they've talked with national and local retailers to begin sourcing gift certificates, coupons, and things like that, so that if you hit your carbon reduction goals, you get a little gift. All right, and so for the first time, we're actually beginning to create a financial tickler, if you will. And one of the projects we have, proposals out, I should say, is actually working with occupants in the building so that if the building reduces its carbon impact, the occupants get a little gift. And it comes through the app. And so, to answer your question, we're just at the beginning of thinking creatively about this. But the fact that you can begin to say, wow, we are now getting data that allows us to directly reduce our carbon impacts, or mercury, or lead, or NOx, or SOx, by managing how we use our electricity. What can we now do to that? Well, I think we're just at the beginning of this. The final thing I'll just mention this is what we're using here for the Ann Arbor Water Authority, for all kinds of really good reasons, is this day-ahead data, which is literally, over the next 24 hours, this is our estimate. We also have access to relatively real-time 5-minute data. And so it begins to build in the capacity to say, holy moly, we didn't see it coming, but we're now running into a high carbon event. It's likely to be here for the next 15, 20, 30 minutes. What are we going to do? And the point is, now you have at least the options to do something, as opposed to not even be aware that it's happening and therefore not being able to do anything.
I was just thinking like firing up the coffee machines in the morning. Just funny, or else like doing IT backup.
I think the thing is that once you get into this and you start saying, okay, what will it take to reduce the next 100 kilowatts of power? All kinds of things are going to start to come out. But because we've never really had to ask that kind of question, we don't really know the answers right now, except for, well, we've always done it this way and we better not change it. Which may be true unless we have a different reason to make a decision. And our thesis is that, yeah, folks will be willing to do things to reduce carbon that just simply saving the city a couple bucks, they're not quite as willing to get out of their comfort zones for. Don't know if it's true, but if you give us a chance to try it out.
I just might just answer your question there too, just because I see it's on your agenda coming up is the electric vehicles and the plug-in charging. So that's another area that we've looked at and that could apply to office buildings. So the idea being that potentially you have a slew of cars that are engaged with the charger for perhaps 8 hours during the day. They don't need to be charged up 8 hours during the day. So a smart charger would look for the periods when clean energy is on the margin and be charging during those times. And so we've looked at working on that sort of a smart charge.
So I assume that E2 Intel is a for-profit company that's going to
It is.
provide this service?
So what E2I is in the business of is providing the data, the lean data, and then working with organizations and companies to utilize that data effectively, and then providing the reports. So one of the things we've discovered in our going to market work is having data is nice, but having a report that shows the value of that data is better. And so we're getting better and better at figuring out how to do rapid footprinting. So, could we create a carbon footprint for this building, at least based upon the grid electrical use? I mean, the answer is yes, it's very easy for us to do that. We get your hourly energy information, that's all we need. And we can turn around a report very, very rapidly. And the next edition of the report is actually then to layer in your natural gas and layer in your on-site solar or other, and even potentially the application of RECs and things like that to get an even fuller picture.
During the period of this competition, the funding for all the work that we're doing with Ann Arbor is covered by the sponsor, American Water Works Association. So it's not costing anything for Ann Arbor.
I guess my question comes down to what kind of a premium are we talking about, which is going to determine what scale of business or building or enterprise might be interested in this?
Yeah, just the way the business is set up is there's essentially an access fee to get access to get on the system, and then a small marginal cost for the additional buildings or the additional reports that you want. And if you want to talk more about that offline, we'd be happy to do that. We're doing the pilots right now in part to really determine more clearly what the value opportunities are. So if the city of Ann Arbor wants to work with us to help figure this out and be in most favored nation status, we're actively looking for partners to help us work on that.
Right. Other questions from the commission? Oh,
Just
yes.
an observation, not so much a question. 6 years ago, we were working on carbon, thinking that carbon taxes were coming, and we were gonna have to come up with a strategy of how to manage that. I think this is a great tool because this is secondary to the energy efficiency concept. What's the challenge is, we've taught a lot of people, particularly C&I customers, the large energy users, what energy efficiency is about, because it hits them in their wallet. Right now, in Michigan, probably doesn't hit them so hard carbon-wise, but it may come.
Yeah.
And when it comes, this is really going to be a benefit. This is when they really see the double-edged sword of both the energy efficiency and carbon management, which is that fleeting window of time when you can actually control it yourself, when the grid utility's not doing it. So it's a good tool. It's one of those educational processes we all have to get used to using maybe in the future as a tax or something. Our own intrinsic value of concern about the environment comes into play when we manage our energy use. So pretty interesting.
Very good point.
Good, just
Well-
add one piece to that.
Sure.
Which is just simply, our expectation is that NEEM will actually be very supportive of energy efficiency measures, particularly as you're getting persistence over time. And because we believe that there's a growing portion of the population that will respond to environmental, particularly carbon signals, in a way that price signals by themselves or cost signals is not quite so compelling. So, thank you.
Thank you. Very interesting work. We look forward to seeing more on it in the future. Next on the agenda is the solar PV and EV charging. There you go.
There we go. Whoops.
That's,
Can we get down to the,
Go to view up top there.
View, yep,
you.
oh,
yep, almost,
Okay.
there you go.
boy, this thing's fast.
Full screen mode.
Yeah, there you go. Control L.
Perfect.
All right.
Chairman, Commissioners, thanks for the opportunity to allow me to share my experiences with solar energy and electric vehicles. For those of you who haven't known me for 40 years, like the chairman, and in the spirit of full disclosure, I played a very important role in developing the electric vehicle standards for the auto industry, the United States, Europe, and all the member nations of the International Electrotechnical Commission. After a successful career in clean energy and transportation technology, I moved to the woods west of Chelsea in a home with a very beautiful view that needed a major overhaul, which we did to, one, save energy, stay warm, and also apply solar technology to produce electricity for our home. So in 2013, I installed a 3.5 kilowatt solar array that is connected to Consumers Energy on the ERP program, that's Experimental Advanced Renewable Program. All of my energy is measured and I'm paid a premium price for it on a 15-year contract. A few things about this installation is, being an existing house, it wasn't perfectly south-facing. And in fact, the roof itself faces east and west. So I put the solar panels on the side of the house, and it was very convenient to have a two-position system. I lower the panels in the wintertime to increase production, and more for my benefit, eliminate the need to go wipe the snow off the panels because it automatically falls off every day. If you look in this thing here, there's an inverter that converts the DC energy from the solar panels and feeds it directly to the ERP meter outside. I also have a standby generator and transfer switch, which is shown in the photograph. And additionally, the second meter on the left-hand side is a time of use meter. We purchased some plug-in electric vehicles, well, actually leased them a few years ago. And it's an interesting story. My daughter started out with a new job in Plymouth. That was a 42-mile commute each way to an employer that had charging stations in the parking lots for employees and visitors. Prior to this, she was driving a large family vehicle that got 19 miles to the gallon, had a $450 lease payment, and she was buying $600 worth of gas a month.
Jeez.
The switching over to the plug-in vehicle drove her fuel economy up to 57 miles per gallon. It lowered her gas bill, or gasoline bill, from $600 to $150. The car was $100 less than the old car. So the net is, we're buying gas, making a lease payment and pocketing $100 every month that used to go to the gasoline companies, not to mention the $450 lease payment on the other vehicle. I was so impressed with my daughter's decision that I decided to lease one myself. I have very different driving patterns. Chelsea, Dexter, and Ann Arbor is my world. So I was able to, after 1 year of service, get 100 miles per gallon off of my plug-in. In that year, I used 68 gallons worth of gas when it was $2 a gallon, or $132, which translates into $11 a month, or 37 cents a day. I was so impressed with the fact that the solar panels could fully charge our electric vehicle every day. The production was more than the capacity of the plug-in hybrids. So I figured, why not put in a second system, which I did. Very similar to the first in configuration, with one minor change. We made it a standalone system. It has a large battery to store energy if I'm not home charging during the day. So then I really got lost and I decided to lease a BMW i3. The BMW was one of the first electric vehicles to be designed from the ground up. Highly sustainable content, 95% renewable, built in a factory that's entirely powered by wind and solar energy in Leipzig, Germany. And just really a delight to drive, believe me. And the other thing that I wanted to point out was, in addition to a southwest-facing home, we do have a tree line on the western boundary. So I estimate the combination of the two to reduce my energy production by about 25 or 30% overall. The vehicle came with a smartphone app, and I'd like to have you concentrate on a few numbers here because this is really important information. If you look at the, on the first left-hand image, it shows my energy efficiency, which is 4.3 miles per kilowatt hour. It shows the efficiency of the entire BMW fleet at 3.9 miles per kilowatt hour. And my last trip was 3.7. I probably jumped on the expressway and came to Ann Arbor. Now here's where it really gets interesting, because I know you're interested in greenhouse gas reductions. The smartphone app calculates that two ways. One, if I charge it with my solar panels, I save 2,390 pounds in about a 3-month period. That's 4.5 tons of CO2 annually. If I chose to charge it off the network, the grid, it would be reduced to 406 pounds in 3 months, or about 0.7 of a ton of CO2 reductions annually. Solar energy and electric vehicles are a perfect match. An average car traveling 37 miles a day, which is the US average, can be charged by a solar system the size of a 1-car garage or a standard parking space in Michigan. I don't know if you've been watching the headlines lately, but the transformation of the auto industry to entirely electric powertrains is going to rapidly increase
Here it comes.
to the point where we no longer drive IC engines. If you looked at the Frankfurt show, Volkswagen committed to 300 models. General Motors just did an announcement the other day, 20 new models by 2023. Ford's committed to 17 models. Volvo starting this year. All of the major manufacturers are moving to this transition as rapidly as possible. And the way to explain that is, I've shown powertrains here for two of the Silicon Valley EVs, the Tesla 3, which is everybody's familiar with, and the Lucid Air, which is really a beautiful automobile. But if you look at the powertrains here and the chassis, you have to ask yourself, where's the radiator? Where's the engine? Where's the transmission? Where's the exhaust system?
Yeah.
Where's all the things that you have to maintain as your car travels through its lifetime?
Love it.
It's getting to be so popular that Porsche even developed a pure electric automobile. So it's coming faster than you believe. Many countries, China, India, UK, Scotland, Netherlands, France, Finland, and Germany's on the verge of banning the sale of IC engines eventually, sometime between 2025 and 2040. The benefits to society, to the air we breathe, cannot be overemphasized. If Ann Arbor would like to meet its greenhouse gas emission targets, there is no better way. And I have to congratulate you for starting out with the new systems over here by the farmer's market. You're on the right track. Don't stop, don't let loose. The university parking lots should be covered by solar panels throughout the entire campus, number one. Number two, it is really important that solar energy be used as a secondary land use and not a primary land use. If you put it over the parking lots, guess what? People don't get rained on. They don't get snowed on in the wintertime. They don't fall on.
There's a small risk.
Yeah.
Snow hits you when you're underneath it. but it's a
Well, you
little
can
liability,
enclose them.
right?
There's really some nice work going on. And when you look at all of the universities around the United States and what's going on, Michigan State's doing a beautiful renewable program. Ohio State has solar panels on their football stadium. Arizona State, Georgetown, Smith College, the list goes on and on. These are people that should know and understand the science that underlies this policy debate we're having about the air we breathe. So I would encourage you to put solar panels over every parking lot you can find in the city. And that alone will probably help you meet the gas emission standards.
Right.
From a user standpoint, there's still a 30% tax credit on the solar panels. There's a $7,500 tax credit on the electric vehicles. And the reality is that it's more than 2 times economically beneficial to take the output of your solar panels and eliminate gasoline rather than to suppress your electric bill or displace electricity. I haven't been to a gas station since I leased my new car, and I have no intention of going back. I entirely power it with the sun.
Craig, did you get a tax credit on your battery because it's solar-based?
I did. It was subtracted from the lease.
Okay.
The dealer took it. I mean, they didn't give it to me. But I got $7,500 off immediately
Price,
on
sure.
my car.
Every little bit helps.
So, to summarize, here's some websites that I operate. I wrote a book on the history of electricity a few years back. These websites reaffirm the information that's in there. And I also developed an online petition to encourage the University of Michigan to put the solar panels on top of the buildings on North Campus, over the parking lots, to power the bus stops with lighting, information kiosks, security cameras, and weather protection for our students and faculty and administrators that use the commuter system, which is trying to be enhanced. So I'm saying North Campus is perfect showcase to show off why we're the leaders and the best. South facing, totally open sky. So that's my pitch. I think it's a real good idea for the city and the university to work together to achieve that. So thank you.
Great. Nice presentation. Questions from the commissioner?
Question. Your point about the University of Michigan, I think, is well taken. Unfortunately, they've made a long-term commitment to fracked gas and have a very small incentive to move in this direction. But other universities and community colleges and certainly community colleges would be much more open to this. My question is, are you talking to other universities as well, especially within a 50-mile circle of here, because their changes would actually improve the airshed of our community, and they might be more committed to helping clean up the air in Ann Arbor.
Well, that's a real pertinent and important question, because I have a website for this, and I'm developing a page for other universities to mimic
Good man.
what I'm doing.
Good for you.
Because I think, you know, we look to these people, they're highly educated, they're intelligent, they should know better. I'm sorry to be so disrespectful to the leadership at the university, but come on. You know, students that started their studies as freshmen 4 years ago have witnessed the highest global temperatures every year increasing since then, with no change in mind. Frack gas won't do it. And solar energy is abundant in Michigan. If you look at the German experience, where they're doing 32% of their energy with solar, they have the same solar resources as Alaska. Germany is located entirely above Lake Superior, latitude-wise. So we can do it, and we should do it, and I commend you for all the work that you're doing. And just say, spirit of Tom Petty, don't back down.
All right.
Yes.
Other
So-
questions from commissioners? We're also consumers.
And I'd a benefit for you is, since I was involved in the development of the electric vehicle interface, there's two important points. We allowed for the transfer of power in both directions and the transfer of information. There's an important study going on with PG&E where they use BMWs to fill in power gaps during peak periods, so that while you're parked during the daytime, you may be pulling off the grid at mid-peak. You may be feeding back to the grid with your battery through your electronics, your vehicle electronics, during peak hours, and then pulling it back in before you go home. So,
We have a pilot study we're working on, VTG in Michigan right now. Just,
pardon?
CMS has a pilot study on what's called VTG,
Vehicle to grid.
V2G.
Yeah, okay, all right, yeah.
So we're doing that right now, actually with a pilot, so it's kind of interesting. We'll see what we can do.
The San Francisco program was really successful.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing to me is, BMW has gone so far with this that they're willing to recycle your car battery should it ever need replacement
Smart.
for use in your house. Better yet, so.
Smart.
I'm
Thanks again.
fascinated by this because the Parking and Transportation Department at the university claims to be using a planning strategy based on emissions that's like incentivized by minimizing emissions, but it is not, in my opinion. But I would love for you to put this in front of them and offer them a more evidence-based approach.
I'm working on it every day.
Like I'm having trouble parking, and I called the other day and they told me to park at the commuter lot. The commuter lot's further away from my house than the university, so but they said, oh, if you park in the commuter lot, it'll be a more green commuting. But that's not true.
Here's some financial stuff I'll help you with that'll drive that home is, my BMW has a 33 kilowatt hour battery. My agreement with consumers is, off-peak, I pay 9 cents a kilowatt hour. That's $3 for a charge for 150 miles of driving, which would require 6 gallons of gas, or $15. So I'm buying energy to power my car at 20% of a gasoline equivalent. There's enough upward pricing capability in electric vehicles so that private industry should be glad to put in the charging stations and do a revenue sharing with the city, the university, employers, employer parking. And the important thing is solar charging effectively doubles the usable range of a plug-in hybrid vehicle. So if you bought a Chrysler Pacifica with 30 miles of range and you charged it up at night and you came to work at the university and charged it up in the daytime, now you've got 60 miles of pure electric, clean energy power. So it really has a tremendous impact on the air we breathe primarily. So,
Certainly does.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? If not, we'll move on to, Chuck, are you gonna make a presentation tonight or not?
I'm not,
Okay.
I'll make an announcement at the last bullet point, which is pretty exciting along the lines of what Craig's talking about.
Okay,
We're excited about it.
that's fair. Committee updates. Climate Action Plan.
Millage coming up here in November should be interesting and comes to the funding question, so it kind of ties in with sustainable funding. So possibility for north of $800,000 a year on that front. So eager to see where that goes, and still looking to figure out if that doesn't go, where we look to for funding in the next step on the cap.
Good. Renewable energies. Anything
And likewise,
else?
I don't know if Councilmember Frenzel has any info on the 100% resolution. It kind of relates, I guess, to the renewable energy, I know.
Sure.
I finally had a meeting with the administrator about it, and we're gonna make a couple tweaks. He had some concerns about the backhoes we use, pretty much. And so we might tweak that out of the resolution, but we'll bring it forward next week.
Great.
Great, wonderful. Public input. We still have an audience. Anyone want to speak up and say anything? Okay. Seeing none, hearing none. Items for the next agenda. Yes.
Okay, so my public announcement, so I can now officially tell you that, and it's my project, it's under my leadership, we are building the largest solar PV array system in Michigan that's axis tilting. It's single axis tilting. So DTE's got the largest solar system, obviously, up at Lapeer. This is going to be single axis tracking. It's under construction. You'll see it from I-96 here pretty soon. As you drive through, you'll see a GM Delta assembly plant. Just off to the west side of the road, you're going to see a pretty big array. It's roughly 200 acres, about 86,400 panels.
Where is it at? Where's it gonna be?
It's just north of the GM Delta Assembly Plant. So the southwest corner of Lansing.
Lansing,
Del-
okay.
Delta
gotcha.
Township.
Yeah, okay.
So it'll be selling electricity to Lansing Board of Water and Light, who, as part of their integrated resource plan, moving pretty quickly toward retiring its coal plants and going now more renewables, maybe gas, but I think they're gonna really focus on renewables, is my suspicion. Very exciting project. As part of that, what I was going to do is give you a video. We did a pilot project first off to see whether it made sense for us in the Midwest to go single axis tracking. And so we did a pilot project. It's a 2 megawatt project in Wisconsin. It's performing above plan. So that's why we invested in it at a much larger scale now. And what I was gonna do is suggest, and if it's a little bit technical, so I apologize, it's interesting. I'll try to stay out of the weeds. But I'll show a video if you want next time, and I'll show you how single axis and dual axis tracking. Now, a bad example of dual axis tracking is at the Firekeepers Casino. Everybody drives by that. And for whatever reason, I can't talk about it maybe, or I know about it, but I don't want to talk about it, or whatever you want to say. That's not being effectively managed. So, and you can tell because the panels are pointed in different directions. So, kind of an interesting heads up that, hey, something's not quite right. But, so we've looked at dual axis, single axis, and fixed panels. So I'd be willing to talk a little bit about how that works, how solar layers into the strategies as we're looking at them going down the road. And then a little bit about microgrids maybe. But if you want me to give a presentation on that, I'd be happy to show you that it makes sense. And even for homeowners, and I know Craig showed his manually 2-axis tracking, which I'm sure you don't like doing all the time. It's probably not a big deal for as many panels. 86,000 panels might be a little bit of a problem.
Likely I love to do it, but I can understand why other people wouldn't.
Yeah. Well, 86,000 panels, I could start now and make it done by the end of next year, one of those things. But, fortunately, we have motors doing that work for us, but it is pretty cool, and it is a challenge. I mean, there's some maintenance issues we have to worry about, but real exciting to get this thing launched. It will be generating power by April next year. And then factor phase 2 in July, but I think we'll be there probably May for both projects for sure. At the rate we're going, if we have a bad winter, one never knows. But I'd be willing to give tours if somebody wants to come see what that looks
Sure,
like.
yeah, I
It's
would, absolutely.
probably not a great time now. It's a farm field with a lot of posts going in, but give us a little bit of time, and Energy Commission would be welcome to come out.
I'm also on Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association Board of
Yep.
Directors, and we have our meetings the third Wednesday of every month. So if we could schedule one around that, perhaps in November.
Well, you're not gonna see much, so I'm gonna suggest maybe next spring.
Next spring, all
We
right,
can
let's
show
go
you
next
how
spring.
the Axis Tracker works,
Okay.
and
Yeah, yeah.
demonstrate it
For sure.
and run some live.
We meet in Lansing, so that'd be great.
Yeah. So be happy to have the commission come up and have a look too.
Excellent.
That'd be wonderful.
But the video will show you a lot without having to be in the field kicking dirt around,
Great.
so, good
Thank
stuff.
So that's
I
not a
look forward
community
to
solar
that.
project, though, is it?
It's a what?
It's not a community solar project, it's wholly owned?
It's owned by CMS Enterprises, which is me, but, our company, but, it's selling 100% of its power to Lansing. So in theory, it's kind of a hybrid. It's not really community solar in the sense of local ownership.
Right.
But it's Michigan-owned, Michigan-built, Michigan Power.
Excellent.
Great.
So hopefully the sun will shine on it a lot. It's a big
Yeah.
investment.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
I just wanted to remind folks that today is my last Energy Commission meeting.
Wow.
Council members change over the Sunday after the November election. And then we have, as you may recall from past years, the reallocation for council members to different committees happens in one of the meetings in December. So you'll probably have a meeting or two without a representative here, but you will have someone soon thereafter. And that's not determined at all. Nate and I put our 2 cents in with the team, but we'll find out I'll find out when you find out. But it's been an absolute delight. I sit on 10 boards and commissions, and I definitely learned the most from this one. From you guys, it's obviously up my alley, but not my technical background, so I really appreciate all that all the expertise and the technical side that you all bring to the table, because that has been a benefit to me and my learning, but also obviously to the community and to the city as a whole. So thank you for my edification.
Well, we certainly will miss you, and we always like to have volunteers, so if you'd like to keep involved in anything at all, you can certainly,
I'm hearing that a
Work,
lot
with-
right now.
sorry I couldn't resist.
No,
But
no,
It's
yeah.
been great having you here.
I'd
Thank
give you a hard time
so
if you
much.
didn't. Thanks, everybody.
Anything else from the commissioners? If not, I will declare this meeting adjourned at 12 minutes after 7. Nice meeting, thank you. Nice presentations.
Yeah.